Namaste, all, and welcome to our continuing series on the synthesis of yoga with our beloved Ranga. We're on page 110, the Yoga of Divine Works, beginning with the sentence, and the fruit also.
And the fruit also of the sacrifice of works varies according to the work, according to the intention in the work, and according to the spirit that is behind the intention. But all other sacrifices are partial, egoistic, mixed, temporal, incomplete. Even those offered to the highest powers and principles keep this character. The result too is partial, limited, temporal, mixed in its reactions, effective only for a minor or intermediate purpose. The one entirely acceptable sacrifice is a last and highest and uttermost self-giving. It is that surrender made face to face with devotion and knowledge, freely and without any reserve, to one who is at once our immanent self, the environing constituting all, the supreme reality, beyond this or any manifestation, and secretly all these together, concealed everywhere, the immanent transcendence. For to the soul that wholly gives itself to Him, God also gives Himself altogether. Only the one who offers his whole nature finds the self. Only the one who can give everything enjoys the divine all everywhere. Only a supreme self-abandonment attains to the supreme. Only the sublimation by sacrifice of all that we are can enable us to embody the highest and live here in the immanent consciousness of the transcendent spirit. Sounds almost impossible for us. But this is for the integral yoga. The other yogas were satisfied with even partial results. So we'll start reading.
So, when Mother has written, some give their...
the first frontispiece of the Mother.
Yes, yes.
Prayers and meditations of the Mother.
Hmm?
The Mother's handwriting in the prayers and meditations of the Mother.
Yes.
This is the first thing that she writes in her own hand.
Yes.
It is published.
The first thing that she wrote in her own hand.
Some give their possessions, some offer their wealth, some offer, I'm not quoting the exact words,
It's okay.
Some give themselves wholly, entirely, and then the divine also gives in that same proportion.
But she makes a statement at the end of that others who don't give all of that are useless ciphers.
For the spiritual life.
For the spiritual life.
Yeah. They may be very useful in the physical world.
Okay.
But they are not useful for the spiritual life.
All right.
We'll read each sentence and see what he's saying. And the fruit also of the sacrifice of works varies according to the work, according to the intention in the work, and according to the spirit that is behind the intention. Now that's interesting, because we would have thought that intention is enough. But he's saying there is also a spirit behind the intention. So it's interesting, because the intention may be to others defective or even wrong, but the intention behind is good. Two very simple examples. You may have to tell a lie sometimes, which is not considered good at all. But the intention is to save somebody. So the intention also is important, but the spirit behind the intention also is important. That's what is mentioning. Look at Arjuna's situation. He has to kill people, and it would be normally considered a crime. But the intention is to obey the divine. And in that spirit it has to be done.
Yes.
In the beginning it doesn't have the spirit, nor the intention. According to spirit, that is behind the intention. But all other sacrifices are partial, egoistic, mixed, temporal, incomplete. Even those offered to the highest powers and principles keep this character. That means they are partial in the beginning, when you are in ignorance. The result too is partial, limited, temporal, mixed in its reactions, effective only for a minor or intermediate purpose. The one entirely acceptable sacrifice is the last and highest and uttermost self-giving. It is that surrender made face to face with devotion and knowledge. Only devotion won't do, it has to be this also knowledge. Freely and without any reserve to one who is at once our immanent self, the environing constituent all, the supreme reality behind this or any manifestation, and secretly all these together concealed everywhere, the immanent transcendence. So, he is saying that this virtue you are going to offer to somebody who is, constantly you will see that it goes on in that way, okay? So, who is, and it is to one who is at once our immanent self. The immanent self is the individual divine in you, the environing constituent all, the cosmic, and the supreme reality, the transcendent.
Mm-hmm.
So he is constantly referring to all the three all the time. Okay? Concealed everywhere. You don't see it. The immanent transcendence. The immanent transcendence. Almost an opposition.
Mm-hmm.
It's again an oxymoron.
An oxymoron.
The transcendence is up there, but he is also here down here. In you. Immanent transcendence. For to the soul that gives, that wholly gives itself to him, God also gives himself altogether. This is, we must remember, you should not misinterpret this. God doesn't give you as much as you give, because He is always willing to give you. But how much are you opening yourself? So the more you open yourself, He will be able to enter into you. Otherwise the doors are closed in that sense.
And how
God
much,
is not doing a business.
How much can you hold? How much can you accept?
That's right.
Yes.
So it's in that sense that we have to see this sentence. Not in the sense of a, you give this much, I give this much. No, it's not a commercial deal. For to the soul that wholly gives itself to him, God also gives himself altogether. Only the one who offers his whole nature finds the self. Only the one who can give everything enjoys the divine all everywhere. Only a supreme self-abandonment attains to the supreme. Only the sublimation by sacrifice of all that we are can enable us to embody the highest and live here in the immanent consciousness of the transcendent spirit. So he is again using immanent consciousness of the transcendent spirit. The transcendent is outside the universe. He is also there in the universe, and he is in the immanent in every form. Okay. We read the next sentence.
Yeah, it's a long one. So
this, in short, is the demand made on us, that we should turn our whole life into a conscious sacrifice. Every moment and every movement of our being is to be resolved into a continuous and devoted self-giving to the Eternal. All our actions, not less the smallest and most ordinary and trifling than the greatest and most uncommon and noble, must be performed as consecrated acts. Our individualized nature must live in the single consciousness of an inner and outer movement dedicated to something that is beyond us and greater than our ego. No matter what the gift or to whom it is presented by us, there must be a consciousness in the act that we are presenting it to the one divine being in all beings. Our commonest or most grossly material actions must assume this sublimated character. When we eat, we should be conscious that we are giving our food to that presence in us. It must be a sacred offering in a temple, and the sense of a mere physical need or self-gratification must pass away from us. In any great labor, in any high discipline, in any difficult or noble enterprise, whether undertaken for ourselves, for others, or for the race, it will no longer be possible to stop short at the idea of the race, of ourselves, or of others. The thing we are doing must be consciously offered as a sacrifice of works, not to these, but either through them or directly to the one Godhead. The divine inhabitant, who was hidden by these figures, must be no longer hidden, but ever present to our soul, our mind, our sense. The workings and results of our acts must be put in the hands of that one, in the feeling that that presence is the infinite and most high, by whom alone our labor and our aspiration are possible. For in His being all takes place. For Him all labor and aspiration are taken from us by nature and offered on His altar. Even in those things in which nature is herself very plainly the worker, and we only the witnesses of her working and its containers and supporters, there should be the same constant memory and insistent consciousness of a work and of its divine master. Our very inspiration and respiration, our very heartbeats can and must be made conscious in us as a living rhythm of the universal sacrifice. My God. The very heartbeats, your breath, every breath, you should be conscious that you are doing it for the Lord. Not easy at all. So I think fairly simple.
Yes. I think it's quite clear.
Yeah, so we could go to the next one.
Yeah.
It is clear that a conception of this kind and its effective practice must carry in them three results that are of a central importance for our spiritual ideal. It is evident to begin with that even if such a discipline is begun without devotion, it leads straight and inevitably towards the highest devotion possible. For it must deepen naturally into the completest adoration imaginable, the most profound God love. There is bound up with it a growing sense of the divine in all things, a deepening communion with the divine in all our thought, will, and action, and at every moment of our lives. a more and more moved consecration to the divine of the totality of our being. Now, these implications of the yoga of works are also of the very essence of an integral and absolute bhakti. The seeker who puts them into living practice makes in himself continually a constant, active, and effective representation of the very spirit of self devotion, and it is inevitable that out of it there should emerge the most engrossing worship of the highest to whom is given this service. An absorbing love for the Divine Presence, to whom he feels an always more intimate closeness, grows upon the consecrated worker, and with it is born, or in it is contained, a universal love too for all these beings, living forms and creatures that are habitations of the divine. Not the brief, restless, grasping emotions of division, but the settled, selfless love that is the deeper vibration of oneness. In all, the seeker begins to meet the one object of his adoration and service. The way of works turns by this road of sacrifice to meet the path of devotion. It can be itself a devotion as complete, as absorbing, as integral as any the desire of the heart can ask for, or the passion of the mind can imagine.
Yeah, we have to go over that a little bit.
Huh?
We have to go over this passage a little bit. This aspect, he says, even if it's begun without devotion.
Yeah, that's important. That's what we
Yeah.
discuss.
Good.
That's a very important point.
Yeah.
So, it is clear that a conception of this kind and its effective practice. So, what is that? Constantly offering every thought, every emotion, every action to the divine. You are doing it not for yourself, but you are doing it for the Lord. Now, in the beginning, this can be mechanical. That's what he means by without devotion. Yes, mechanical.
It's mechanical.
And you may
yes.
wonder, it is so mechanical, what is the difference if I am offering it in my mind mechanically to the divine, or I am offering it to my best friend? What's the difference? It is mechanical. But it's not true, because when you do it there, then the devotion comes slowly, because you are making a connection with the divine. I used to wonder about this. When I was quite young, I used to wonder. Concentration, how does it lead you to the divine? I can concentrate on the divine, I can concentrate on mother's photograph. It's a physical photograph. I can concentrate on a dot, what is known as tratak. Okay? That's they do that often in Tantra. They just one dot and you concentrate on that. So it depends on what you're concentrating. So how does it lead to that? So the truth is that whatever you are concentrating on is a symbol. And behind the symbol will lead you to that which is symbolized. So if you're concentrating on the photograph, it may be a physical thing, but it will lead you to the photograph of mother.
But there's a great difference in concentration and consecration.
Yes, consecration is quite different. Consecration is the offering of yourself. And there is also a suggestion in consecration of what you are consecrating becomes holy. In the Christian theory, it is like that, consecrated. The water is consecrated and becomes holy, and with that they baptize people. So consecration also has that it becomes pure and holy by the very fact of offering it to the divine. So it is clear that a conception of this kind and its effective practice must carry in them three results. that are of a central importance for our spiritual ideal. It is evident to begin with. I think we can also stress the word for our spiritual ideal. He means in the
Yes.
integral yoga.
Yes, definitely.
Our spiritual, not for every other. Okay. It is evident to begin with that even if such a discipline is begun without devotion, there you are, that's what we discussed. It leads straight and inevitably towards the highest devotion possible. Why? Because you are constantly thinking of the Lord, and then automatically you will fall in love with what you are concentrating on.
Now, when one is doing japa, it may be mechanical in the beginning,
Yes.
and usually is, I
Yes.
feel. But eventually, one sees that it's coming without thought.
There is a passage in Savitri where Srindra is talking of the repetition of the mantra. Finally, you may see it go on mechanically doing. Finally, he says, it runs in the breath. It becomes so integral.
Yes.
So that is what is meant. Mechanically in the beginning, yes. But afterwards it becomes very, very meaningful. It is evident to begin with that even if such a discipline is begun without devotion, it leads straight and inevitably towards the highest devotion possible. For it must deepen naturally into the completest adoration imaginable, the most profound God love. There is bound up with it a growing sense of the divine in all things, a deepening communion with the divine in all our thought, will, and action, and at every moment of our lives, a more and more moved consecration to the divine of the totality of our being. Now, he has used a very interesting word here. He has used the word more moved consecration. He has used this several times in this sense, moved. Even in Savitri it is there. So I think what he means is moving. You have a moving experience. So then that is, it gives you emotion. I think he's using in that sense. A moved consecration. A consecration with emotion. But I'm not sure. There's still a bit of a mystery to me how he's using the word moved. But you do say, na? If you're.
Could it be progressive?
Could be, I don't know.
Yeah.
But normally you say, if someone does something nice, you are moved.
You're moved, yes.
In other words, you're moved means what? You're
I think
emotionally.
that's probably better.
Yeah,
Yes.
you are grateful. So in that
Yes.
sense, I think he is
Yes.
using the word. Totality of our being. Now, these implications of the yoga of works are also of the very essence of an integral and absolute bhakti. If you go on giving yourself, bhakti also arises. The seeker who puts them into living practice, not mechanical practice, living practice, makes in himself continually a constant, active, and effective representation of the very spirit of self-devotion. And it is inevitable that out of it there should emerge the most engrossing worship of the highest to whom is given this service. An absorbing love for the divine presence, to whom he feels an always more intimate closeness, grows upon the consecrated worker. And with it is born, or in it is contained. Okay, it's interesting. Either it comes up or it's already there and it's coming up. A universal love too for all these beings, living forms and creatures that are habitations of the divine. You start loving everything around you. This experience can definitely be there when the psyche comes forward. You start appreciating The beauty in animals, the beauty in flowers, the beauty in nature, everything starts becoming beautiful. And if there is beauty, you also love it. And if there is beauty and love, automatically there is joy. And with it is born, or in it is contained, a universal love too for all these beings, living forms, and creatures that are habitations of the divine. Not the brief, restless, grasping emotions of division, but the settled, selfless love that is the deeper vibration of oneness. So now he is saying that settled, selfless love leads to oneness also, the cosmic consciousness. In all, the seeker begins to meet the one object of his devotion and service. The way of works turns by this road of sacrifice to meet the path of devotion. So, Karma Yoga automatically leads to the path of bhakti. It can be itself a devotion as complete, as absorbing, as integral as any the desire of the heart can ask for, or the passion of the mind can imagine.
And if this is reversed,
Pardon?
if this is reversed, and it starts with the heart, or
Yeah. Then
And
also you get, he says that.
yeah,
He says that it gives you knowledge. When you love something,
Yes.
or even somebody, you come to know more and more of him. So it gives you knowledge. He says that elsewhere.
good.
Next. So when he says next, he means the consecration, offering everything of yourself. That's the first movement. Now the next. The practice of this yoga demands a constant inward remembrance of the one central liberating knowledge, and a constant active externalizing of it in works comes in too to intensify the remembrance. In all is the one self, the one divine is all. All are in the divine, all are the divine, and there is nothing else in the universe. This thought or this faith is the whole background until it becomes the whole substance of the consciousness of the worker. A memory, a self-dynamizing meditation of this kind must and does in its end turn into a profound and uninterrupted vision and a vivid and all-embracing consciousness of that which we so powerfully remember or on which we so constantly meditate. For it compels a constant reference at each moment to the origin of all being and will and action, and there is at once an embracing and exceeding of all particular forms and appearances in that which is their cause and upholder. This way cannot go to its end without a seeing, vivid and vital, as concrete in its way as physical sight, of the works of the universal spirit everywhere. On its summits, it rises into a constant living and thinking and willing and acting in the presence of the supermental, the transcendent. Whatever we see and hear, whatever we touch and sense, all of which we are conscious, has to be known and felt by us as that which we worship and serve. All has to be turned into an image of the divinity, perceived as a dwelling place of His Godhead, enveloped with the eternal omnipresence. In its close, if not long before it, this way of works turns by communion with the divine presence. With the divine presence, will and force into a way of knowledge more complete and integral than any the mere creature intelligence can construct or the search of the intellect can discover. So, there he is saying very clearly, and he is saying that if you follow this, says, whatever you see and hear, whatever we touch and see, all of which we are conscious has to be known and felt by us as that which we worship and serve. It reminds me of, he has got sonnets. The divine hearing, yes. The divine sight. So the divine hearing is a very interesting one. He says that even the harshest sounds in the world become a divine hearing. The eagle screeching, the siren of the factory, the automobile going and honking, everything becomes a divine sound.
And I was reading last night what Mother says about when she went into that atmosphere and she heard music that would sound dull here. All music would sound dull here. Because she said that is what has to come down.
Yeah, there is a discussion in the agenda also about even jazz.
Mm-hmm.
And if you go behind that form, you will see the origin of the movement. So, yeah, it's very interesting. But these two sonnets are very interesting. All that is seeing, all that is hearing, all that is touching even and sense, everything becomes divine.
And at this human level, then when we see obvious falsehood.
But when you are in that consciousness, you will not see the falsehood. You will see it as very surface movement. It's a distorted movement of truth.
Okay.
It's a distorted movement of truth.
Distorted movement of truth.
You won't see it as falsehood as we understand it. Because of the dualities, no? Truth,
right.
When it reduces itself, becomes a falsehood. Like light. When it reduces itself, it is still light. It is still light.
Yes.
It is still light. Now it has become dark. But darkness is still absence of light only. So, first he said about that, then he said next, now he is saying last. Lastly, the practice of this yoga of sacrifice compels us to renounce all the inner supports of egoism, casting them out of our mind and will and actions, and to eliminate its seed, its presence, its influence out of our nature. All must be done for the divine. All must be directed towards the divine. Nothing must be attempted for ourselves as a separate existence. Nothing done for others, whether neighbors, friends, family, country, or mankind, or other creatures, merely because they are connected with our personal life and thought and sentiment, or because the ego takes a preferential interest in their welfare. In this way of doing and seeing, all works and all life become only a daily dynamic worship and service of the divine in the unbounded temple of his own vast cosmic existence. Life becomes more and more the sacrifice of the eternal in the individual, constantly self-offered to the eternal transcendence. It is offered in the wide sacrificial ground of the field of the eternal cosmic spirit, and the force too that offers it is the eternal force, the omnipresent mother. Therefore is this way a way of union and communion by acts and by the spirit and knowledge in the act, as complete and integral as any our Godword will can hope for, or our soul's strength execute. So, we have read so many paras. So, he's saying that if you do Karma Yoga, it will give you knowledge, it will also give you love. That's what he's saying. Each para is telling you that. Do the Karma Yoga, offer your every action, thought, and will, everything to him, and it will lead you to knowledge of him, it will also lead you to love of him.
And we do the last paragraph before the break.
Yeah. So, it has all the power of a way of works. This is the integral way. Not only the Karma Yoga, but the integral way. It has all the power of a way of works, integral and absolute. But because of its law of sacrifice and self-giving to the divine self and master, it is accompanied on its one side by the whole power of the path of love, and on the other by the whole power of the path of knowledge. At its end, all these three divine powers work together, fused, united, completed, perfected by each other. So the integral yoga will give you knowledge, love, and your every action that you do will be dedicated to the divine. That is the reason why Mother gave so much importance to work in the ashram. She used to always say work. We stop here today?
We can stop here today.